Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain. We look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are looking at the Ladies' Home Journal from October 1884. And this article is entitled Early Marriages, What Young Lovers Should Look At Before Going to the Altar. I did another video on advice to brides before they get married, and I'm not sure if this is in the same vein. I think it's by a different person. This person is Mrs. M.P. Handy in Philadelphia Press. So it could be about all sorts of different things, but I think it was interesting that it was specifically addressed to young people who were looking to get married. So not necessarily older couples who were maybe older than 25, I'll say, but we're talking about young people, like 17, 18, 19, 20, thinking like, oh, I want to get married like right now. Because even in 1884, it wasn't that common, but it did happen sometimes. So it wasn't completely unheard of, but it wasn't every day either. It would definitely elicit comment if somebody was significantly younger than was average. So let's see what they have to say. I am curious because I know that we have this notion in our minds and be like, oh, well, people, particularly women, married very young back then. But I don't think that was really the case. I don't think that many people married young back then. Some people did, but it wasn't that common. So let's take a look. So long as the cat is left in company with the cream jug, the cream will be absorbed. And so long as young people of both sexes are allowed to meet freely in social intercourse, there will be more or less marrying and giving in marriage. Okay. I don't think I would have described it that way. I feel like that's slightly problematic, the way they described it, because a cat is not trained to have discipline, and never was. It's not particularly something they're good at. So yeah, if you leave them alone in a room with a bowl of cream, they're gonna eat it, drink it, Like comparing that to young people allowed to, quote unquote, meet freely in social intercourse. So they're allowed to be friends with people of the opposite sex. Great. Like, I don't understand why that's a problem. And then said that because of that, they're getting married. That's not why they're getting married. Like, that wasn't the cause. Like, it might have been the reason why they met, but it wasn't the reason why they're marrying, yeah? So, I don't know. I don't like that because, like, they're basically that comparison means that they think that young people have absolutely no discipline. I mean, that's comparing them to a cat who will eat a bowl of cream if left alone. You're basically calling young people completely undisciplined. And I don't think that's fair. I think there are a lot of very disciplined young people. So, yeah, let's be fair to young people. It is greatly to be feared that with the proverbial thoughtlessness of youth, the young people will not stop to consider the question of ways and means, nor calmly calculate whether they shall be able to gather sticks in sufficient quantity to keep the matrimonial pot boiling. Tom, with a lover's ardor, will probably forget to inquire before marriage whether Jemima is capable of cooking dinner, while Jemima, on her part, is just as likely to be left in blissful ignorance whether Tom has a bank account outside of his salary, which will ensure there being a dinner to cook as well as a kitchen wherein to cook it. Once again, totally unfair. Not all young people are horrible cooks. Not all young people are completely flat broke. I really don't like this. I feel like it's very much putting down young people and saying that they're not capable of making good decisions. Young people, I feel like, need a little bit of guidance sometimes. You need to, have a double check, because you know that you don't always make the most rational of decisions. So then I would check in with someone I trusted, like a parental figure, for example, to see what they think of my choices and see if that was rational. Does this make sense to you? And then the parent can kind of guide them a little bit and be like, well, did you ask if he has a job? Oh, no, I didn't think of that. Well, if you didn't think of that, well, why don't you ask? Next time you see each other, you can ask. The thing is, young people don't get married the first time they meet. I've never heard of that. So if a young person is interested in marrying someone, then I'm assuming they're going to have a little bit of time to figure these things out before they make all of their plans completely concrete. So, like, just guide them a little bit. It's not that hard. But, like, claiming that they would never think to ask this is not fair. It's not fair to young people. It is all a mistake to say that two people can live as cheaply as one. For proof controvertive, you have only to ask for rates at any boarding house. But that's not the same thing now, is it? Because if you book a single room at a boarding house, then yes, it costs less than booking a double room at a boarding house. But at the same time, like, two people, if they're sharing a room, they kind of can live almost as cheaply as one. The difference will be in the amount of you spend on clothing and the amount you spend on food. Because utilities is going to be about the same, although you will be using slightly more water. But you see what I mean? Like, you don't necessarily need a bigger place, you know? I don't know. It seems like it makes sense to me. Two people can live almost as cheaply as one. And that's why it's not that big of a burden to take care of someone, you know, financially. Anyways, unless you're paying for their rent. For example, Augustus manages to support life quite endurably on his salary of $10 or $15 per week, perhaps even maintains a certain position in society thereon. But he would never dream of asking Augusta to share it. If he did, Augusta, with her worldly wisdom, would think him demented or tipsy. $6 a week pays for his bedroom on the 4th floor of a respectable boarding house, which he patronizes. Or perhaps he rents a small furnished room, and trusting to occasional invitations to dinner, etc., takes his meal on the European plan. The rest of his salary with close economy keeps him in clothes, gloves, and cigars, with an occasional theater ticket and admission to the opera on gala nights. His well-kept dress suit does not often need renewal, and dancing men are always in request at parties. But this isn't a very good example, now is it? Because he's living hand to mouth. He's living paycheck to paycheck. It's not like he has a whole lot more that he could spend. So if somebody else moved in, then yeah, they would be spending more on clothing, like I said, and food. Even if they were allowed to live in the same room. If he's renting a room, the single room, then no, there's not going to be enough room for another person. If, however, he's renting a small furnished room. See, like what they're describing, a respectable boarding house or a small furnished room, that isn't his. You know, that's almost like living in a hotel. So I don't feel like that's a good comparison. If he were like renting an entire apartment that he furnished himself, and then it would be furnished with his furniture, yeah, then that would be his. See the difference? So I feel like this example, it's very, very short-sighted. This is basically somebody living in a dorm room. Like, no, it would be very difficult to get married in that situation, so. But I think that's pretty obvious. I don't know a whole lot of students who live in dorm rooms who do get married. Or if they do, they move out, yeah? So, anyway, but what on earth could he do with a wife? Angels and ministers of grace defend us. Where are Augusta's dresses to come from? How is even the board bill for 2 instead of 1 to be paid? How could they expect people to visit them? So he dances on, hoping vainly to find a rich wife, while she, on her part, knows that her duty to herself requires that her husband shall be able to give her at least the luxuries to which she has been accustomed and keeps detrimentals at a safe distance. No. I think that most people who grew up in a certain, luxury are aware that if they get married and move out, then they're very likely to not have all of those luxuries. I think most people know that. They're very much making it sound like young people are stupid, and I don't appreciate this. Okay. Or if they forget themselves so far as to marry, in all probability, both of them are miserable, since neither can help looking back with longing eyes to the world whence they have shut themselves by their wedding. That's also not very kind. Do you think they didn't see this coming? And even if they didn't and just got married blindly and just, now suddenly they're in different circumstances, they're going to be unhappy because they don't have as much stuff? I don't like this. This is not kind. This is not kind to people. It makes it sound like people are stupid, and especially young people. Young people getting married are stupid, and they don't know what they're getting into. Do they not? I feel like most people know this. I'm sorry, but... Okay. To ensure happiness in married life, there must be perfect support. Okay. Thorough sympathy as well as sincere affection between the twain who have been made one flesh. While there is wealth and to spare, less may answer for the wedded pair who, while two in heart, must bear the privations and poverty as one. Life is hard indeed. While love may not actually sweeten sugarless tea, it undoubtedly does much to render the cup less nauseous. The woman cannot be altogether unhappy who knows that she is the light of her husband's eyes. That man cannot be utterly discouraged who knows that, come what may, his wife believes in him thoroughly. That's what I said. If they're both on board, if they're both happy with each other, then they will probably be happy with less stuff, with less buying power. I just don't think that most people are this short-sighted. While it is not always a safe experiment, a man, if he be worthy the name, will often work the harder and win success in the face of apparently insurmountable obstacles because he has given hostages to fortune. Hostages to fortune, I don't know what they mean by that. More than one man has won his laurels chiefly because he could not bear to disappoint the woman whose faith in him might have moved mountains. When left to himself, he had probably sat down content with a little success. Yeah, I don't think that that's short-sighted, because once you have a family, have people who depend on you, then you are much more likely to work a little bit harder for them, knowing that they need you to. Yeah, I think that's true. A good wife is seldom, if ever, a hindrance to a man, and it has passed into a proverb that marriage either makes or mars the man. It is not good for a man, still less woman, to be alone. And however willingly single blessedness may have been chosen, there are few in such cases who do not sometimes feel how hard a thing it is to look at happiness through other people's eyes. Still, marriage is by no means to be lightly entered into. As a wise old lady used to say, never marry anybody until you are quite sure that you cannot be comfortable without them. I like that. You have to be so close to someone who you're thinking of marrying that you would be uncomfortable if they weren't there. I like that. I feel like that's very good advice in that point. But if two people be of sound health in mind and body, love each other truly, and have a reasonable certainty of an income sufficient to keep the wolf from the door, let them not fear to marry, provided always that they are willing to give up all attempt at fashionably display, and without dread of Mrs. Grundy, steadily to live within their income and for each other. Once again, I don't like that. You're basically saying that in order to get married, you both have to have a steady income. I disagree. I think that two young people who want to get married, and are old enough, by the way, and are struggling financially, they can definitely get married and still have things work out, as long as they're both willing to work for it. Yeah? But saying you need a steady income in order to be married, I guess that's your ideal situation, but I don't believe in this. The famous speech of Micawber on domestic finance should be framed in gold as a wedding gift to every young couple. It contains the whole secret in a nutshell. Are you serious? No. Never frame anything that you don't 100% believe in and are happy when you see it. Advice on finances should not be something that you frame. That's ridiculous. And I think what they're trying to say is, if I were to word it so it would be acceptable to me, and put it that way, is that if you see a young couple who wants to get married and may or may not have all of their ducks in a row financially, that they need some kind of advisor to help them to make good financial decisions. I accept that idea. This idea of you can't get married unless you have a steady income is ridiculous. In marrying under any circumstances, do not hope for happiness pure and simple. It is not to be found on earth. Married or single, you will have trouble, and the troubles of marred life, I think they mean married life. The troubles of married life, being less selfish, are usually easier to bear. Where two people love each other truly, troubles serve only to bind them closer together. Certain it is that gold tried in the fire can never more be doubted. Like they're contradicting themselves all over the place. They're saying, okay, if you're just because you're married, you won't have any troubles. That's true. Like that doesn't mean you're not going to have trouble. So yeah, everybody has trouble. That's just part of being alive. But chronic illness, financial issues, some sort of psychological problems like interpersonal communication. Like there are so many different things that can go wrong. However, as it says, that if you are together and if you are working together, then you can still be happy and that you can grow closer together. I actually thought they were going to specifically talk about issues that young people have if they decide to marry at, let's say, age 17, 16, like very young. But I was not expecting them to go into this tirade of like, you better have good finances if you're going to get married. There are some people who never have good finances. Does that mean that they are never allowed to get married? This is ridiculous, and I think that this gold digger mentality is ridiculous. There are lots of people who choose to get married that aren't rich, who aren't financially stable, and I feel like there's no reason they couldn't get married just because of their finances. Finances will come. Yeah, it's not from one day to the next, but eventually, they'll stabilize a little bit. It'll be fine. It doesn't mean you can't get married if you really want to. Like, I already have some pretty strong feelings about these kind of things. The only thing that I would say is applicable today is that if you move out of your parents' house, you're likely to have less. And that is 100% true. I think that's still true today. But I think pretty much everybody knows that. Like, students, for example, are still, like, they're notoriously broke. Like, they don't tend to have tons of money. Does that mean that they're not allowed to get married? Of course not. And it's just that if two students get married, then they have to accept the possibility that it's going to be a financial struggle, but that maybe if both of them work on it, that it will still work out. Yeah? And yeah, so you might occasionally need help. You might occasionally need some guidance from a parent, but it's just normal kinds of stuff. It's normal stuff that you have to deal with. And as they said at the very end, that if you bear trouble together, then you can actually get closer together, where you realize the other person is really there for you when you need them. And that's a nice feeling to know that for sure the other person is reliable. So I think that's what they were going for, but boy, it didn't come out that way. I don't like how critical many of the articles were back then. I think I'm almost ready to move on to the next year. I'm really enjoying the Ladies' Home Journal and like the kinds of articles they have, but I think I'm going to move on to a different year. We've been working in 1884. This was the first year it came out. I think that the journal probably got better with time, so I'd like to move on to 1901. That's my next goal. So anyway, I hope you at least enjoyed hearing me rant and rave about discrimination against young people. So, but leave a comment down below. What do you think about this issue? And like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.